Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jones in the house. Hope you're doing well wherever you are. And so you've got another great session lined up for Wealth Wednesday. And this one is going to be a good one, I think. Let's have a look. I think Instagram is now live. So welcome everybody on Instagram and welcome everybody on Facebook and YouTube. So today we're going to talk about Section 8 and possible impact of any cuts that we're hearing about. And I think it's a timely topic. It's a topic that a lot of people have been asking me. And hold on a second, turn on my phone. There you go. So as you know, the Section 8 program is a program that is funded by the federal government, the HUD department, and but it's administered locally by what we call housing authorities. Every area has a housing authority, and the funds flow from the federal government to the local government, and they manage or monitor and administer the program locally. So, you know, with Doji and budget cuts and things like that, what I've heard from a lot of people is, well, Dr. Joe, are you going to talk about this? And what's your thoughts? And is it the end of the Section 8 program? Is the world going to crash and burn and so forth? So I thought, you know, I'll address that in one of the live streams, and I'll do that today. As mentioned, I've been participating in this program for about 35 years. I've been through cycles many times before, and there have been times where different administrations decide to cut funding for the Section 8 program, and lo and behold, the program still exists and so forth. So, but I think this time around is a little different. It seems to be a lot more severe, the cuts that have been made. So I think it's a very timely topic that we're going to discuss here. So again, the idea is don't get blindsided. And what can you do as a landlord participating in the Section 8 program? What can you do such that, you know, you're not a casualty and you can prepare appropriately for the impending changes that's taking place? Again, my name is Joe Asamoah. Some people call me Dr. Joe. And we're going to do the education segment. In about 20-25 minutes, we're going to do a Q&A. So if you've got any questions pertaining to anything on real estate, feel free to put your message in the chat box, and I'll try to get to you. It could be anything on real estate, whether it's tenant related, landlord related, buying a deal, renovating contractors, whatever it is, real estate. Feel free to put in the chat box, and I'll get to them, and you can leverage my experiences. If you want more of a deeper dive, then you can book a one-on-one with me. You go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com. That's www.joeasamoah.com. And we can do a deep dive, any situation, any problems, any challenges that you're experiencing, and so on. So with that said, let's get down to business. And so when the rent check doesn't arrive on time, now what you going to do? Okay, so, you know, what do you do if for whatever reason your stable check doesn't arrive? You know, for landlords, especially those depending on subsidized income to meet their mortgage, taxes, maintenance obligations, you know, any disruptions in payments can send their monthly portfolios into a tailspin. It can be a major big deal. I mean, you're expecting $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month plus more, and it doesn't arrive. What are you going to do? Well, with the federal government eyeing spending cuts and tightening really housing program policies, you know, real estate investors like you and I can no longer afford to just operate under outdated assumptions that nothing is going to change. You know, this is not just about preparing for a rainy day. Potentially, it could be about bracing for a storm. You know, the reality is that many landlords like you and I, you know, kind of lulled into a false sense of security by the steady rhythm of voucher-backed rent deposits. As long as I've been doing this, there has never been a month where the check never arrived or it wasn't deposited into my account. It's a very stable funding stream that you can count on. But, you know, those deposits are not guaranteed in perpetuity forever, especially in a volatile political, you know, kind of economic climate that we're in right now. So as the government looks to trim budgets, you know, Section 8 is no longer immune to scrutiny and or even potentially reductions. So delays, denials, and disruptions could become more common. And investors are thriving, who are thriving today, based on flexible systems, device, and things like that, may have to reorient or reposition to be more flexible, more diversified strategies, and so on. So so the bottom line is that change is coming, and I'm going to sort of do a deep dive into what I think you and I can do in preparing for that. Should it arrives, and it probably will do. So the goal is simple. My goal today is to help you become a type of investor who not only survives adversity, but also can build wealth through it. So whether you're just getting started, whether you're managing many large properties or units, hopefully I'm going to share with you practical knowledge and information which you can use for your business. Okay, I'm going to break down today's live stream into 6 sections, and each section is going to focus on a different action items that you can do. And for each the sections, I'll try and create some action steps that you can take that addresses the topic that we're discussing. So we're going to be breaking it down to 6 topics, and let's get going. So the first one is really to understand the Section 8 landscape that we're in right now. And I suppose the question is how could the looming federal cuts and shifting policies blindside your business? What's going on, and how's it going to impact you? So the Section 8 program, as a primer, is known as the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Technically, that's what it's called, the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It's not called Section 8. But it's been a pillar and a reliable income stream for many, many thousands of investors like you and I. But many landlords operate under a false sense of permanence. So as the budget tightens and the political winds shift, what's going to happen is that local authorities, these ones who are, or local housing authorities, who are the ones that administer the program locally, they're going to have to make some tough decisions in terms of what are they going to do now that their funds are cut or budgets are, being reduced. What are they going to do? And depending on the housing authority that you're in, they may take different actions. Some may decide to cut the number of people they're going to serve. Some may decide they're going to cut the number of staff in their housing authorities. Some may make it easier to get people off the program, i.e., you can only be on the program for 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and then you're off. I mean, there's different ways that they could do, given the realities that they have to do with less money. I mean, it's just pure math. So, I've been through some of this before. So in recent years, if there's fewer people to do the same amount of work, then as an investor, as a client of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, as a landlord, you may be more difficult to get hold of people. Your wait times for things like inspections, administrative tasks, it's going to take longer. Or they may decide they want to weed some people off this program, so they make some stringent conditions, before they approve leases or before they renew people. Again, I don't know. These are all speculations. In some cases, they may even have delayed the time that you get your rent. So instead of arriving on the 1st or the 2nd, it may be the 10th, the 15th, the 20th. And if your mortgage is due on the 5th or the 1st or whatever it is, your rent's not going to show up till the 15th or 20th or 30th, then you could run yourself into some cash flow issues. Again, it just depends on how it's administered local. And what are you going to do if that happens? What's the impact for you? So the investors who aren't prepared, those ones who think it's going to be okay, or those ones who want to kick the can down the road and pretend nothing's going to happen, you may end up in a situation where you're unable to cover your mortgage payments because your money is not coming in. And if you don't have reserves, then you could have a cash flow issue. So, obviously you need to have some reserves to cover these rainy day situations. So while more seasoned investors, these are the ones who hopefully are more proactive, now is the time to start establishing these contingency plans. Maybe diversify your income streams, and you start developing relationships with housing authority officials. Okay, so understanding the current and future landscape is step one. And ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance, in fact, is very risky, and it can be very expensive. So now that we've addressed part one, which is just understanding the landscape, I'm going to share with you some action items that you could possibly take. You may want to contact or subscribe to some of the activities at your local authorities. Understand and follow the policy announcements that they make, because again, this program is administered locally. So what's going on in Washington, D.C. may be very different to what's going on in Dallas or Phoenix or LA or whatever it is. So understand what the local policy announcements are making. Monitor any legislative developments at the federal and also at the state levels regarding housing assistance. I think there was talk about maybe using block grants where they're sending more money away from the federal level, more to the local state levels to administer some of these housing programs. So you need to be aware of those things. Maybe join some landlord associations or some online forums where you can stay informed. And also, I would suggest that you establish some direct contact with your housing authority officials. Start developing some relationships now, so they can give you some insights as to what's taking place. So that's number one, which is understanding. I just talked about the action items you can do. And so we're going to go on to number two. So again, wrapping up number one, which is understanding the Section 8 landscape, which is what I've just done. Next thing we're going to talk about is part two. And I'm going to talk about the lease, leases. We all have leases with our tenants. And the reality is, can your lease withstand the changes that's going to take place? I suppose the question is your lease strong enough to survive the coming shakeup? Okay. And many people have these sort of template leases, the ones you get from the, Walmart or somewhere like that. It's got a couple of pages and it's very generic, and that's what they're using. My lease is 20 pages. Okay. And it's very detailed, very thorough, and it lets people know exactly what you can and can't do, what's my expectations for my tenants. So what kind of lease do you have? And does the lease that you have be able to cover some of the situation or address some of the situations that's coming down the pipe? So many landlords, as I said before, use what I call boilerplate leases that really don't account to anything. They don't really address some of the nuances of subsidized tenants or Section 8 programs. So when policies change and the payments slow down, these landlords are kind of left scrambling because their lease doesn't address situation about what happens if the payments slow down, what happens if the payments are late, what happens if the tenant doesn't recertify on time, what if the tenant doesn't comply with the housing authority Section 8 policies. Your lease doesn't address those things. If it's these boilerplate things, it's got to be very thorough, very detailed, and address these situations which are unique to the Section 8 program. So smart investors include clauses that address things like delayed payments. When is rent considered late? If it's late from the housing authority, what does that mean? It doesn't address inspections. When inspections are done, there are usually things that are the responsibilities of the landlord, and there are certain things that are responsibilities of the tenant. Does your lease address those things? Okay, and does it address the tenant responsibilities? And especially as it's specific to Section 8, there are certain things that are unique to Section 8 that may not apply for market renters. For example, there are inspections that are done by the housing authority every once or twice a year. There are things that the tenant has to do to quote unquote recertify. There are commitments that they sign in terms of utilities. If they don't keep up with the utilities, if they don't keep up with their responsibilities, they could get terminated from the program. So that needs to be in your lease, that they have to comply with the terms of the Section 8 program. So that way, if they don't do it, it's a lease violation. So the clauses, these are invaluable, especially in managing your tenant relationships and also maintaining your leverage. For example, one successful investor, that I've met includes a contingency clause that outlines what happens if the housing authority delays payment for more than, let's say, 10 days. Okay, does your lease have that? Another investor, ties tenant incentives to property conditions and timely paperwork compliance. I talked to you about recertifications, not just rent. I had a tenant once whose rent portion was 0, and she failed to recertify. So she was terminated from the program eventually, and therefore the entire rent went to her. And obviously, if she wasn't paying 0, if she was paying 0, she couldn't afford the rent at that time. But my lease addressed some of those things. So I was able to start the eviction process early rather than waiting. Again, that's the benefit. That's the value of having a strong lease that addresses some of these things. So these proactive steps, in my opinion, creates accountability while protecting your landlord, that's you, financial position. A lease isn't just a document. It's really a shield. And in uncertain times like we're going into, it should be crafted accordingly. So make sure your lease is thorough. Revisit your lease. I think you can buy my lease if you like to on my website. Again, I'm not trying to sell that, but my lease is 20 pages. It's very thorough. It's very detailed. It addresses a lot of these things that I've talked about today. So what are some of the action items that you can take as it pertains to leases? Include specific terms and conditions, the unit conditions, tenant paperwork, and recertification responsibilities. That should be things that you could be including in your lease. Work with an attorney who's knowledgeable of your state level laws, and he's familiar with Section 8 regulations to quote unquote future proof your lease, make sure it's strong, and conduct annual lease reviews to ensure that your lease remains legal and practical and is effective during these difficult times. I say it's important to have a strong lease, but what's more important is to have a good relationship, in my opinion, with your tenants. Because if you have a good relationship with your tenants, a lot of the issues can be resolved because you can work together. You are working, I won't say harmoniously, but there's there's a desire to work together as opposed to having an adversarial relationship with your tenant. So I tend to, as you know me, I tend to work on trying to make sure my tenants are happy, make sure that they see me as a good landlord, a caring landlord. And therefore, when we do have problems, and we do have problems every now and then with my tenants, we're able to work it out in the spirit of cooperation. It's not, I'll see you in court, or I'm going to take you down to the housing authority and so forth. That's not the first step that they typically do. Okay, so that's number 2 about the lease. And let's go to number 3 of 6. And that is building a financial buffer. Building a financial buffer. So the question is, how long could you or could your portfolio survive without rent? For a lot of people, that is they can't survive more than a month or even less than a month. So, I'm going to talk about building a financial buffer, which means like reserves and things like that. So, cash flow is king. It's very important until the cash stops, and then it becomes deadly. So successful investors like you and I plan for interruptions by building financial buffers into the business model, having a rainy day fund. Okay, this could be in the form of, say, 6 months worth of mortgage reserves. Some people do 3. If you're able to do, you may want to do more, especially during these uncertain times. 6 months, I think, seems fair. Some people, try to get access to a line of credit. So if you got some properties, now may be a good time to establish a line of credit, a HELOC, home equity line of credit. You don't have to use it if you don't need it, but it's good to have it just in case you need it. So now will be a good time to start establishing a line of credit, or now is a good time to sort of diversify your income streams. Maybe you do some vouchers and some non-vouchers, or you diversify across different housing authorities just in case it gets implemented differently. So, one investor shared with me, how a delay in her housing authority payments nearly crushed her. But she fortunately had a line of credit, HELOC, which is already in place, and therefore she tapped into that when the rents were delayed. So instead of the rents coming on the 1st or the 2nd, it was coming the 15th, the 18th, the 20th, and the mortgages still had to be paid. So she tapped into the line of credit to pay the mortgages, and when the rent came from the housing authority, she then replenished or paid back the HELOC. Okay, but she had access to a credit, and therefore she was able to survive. If you have a turnover, which can be very expensive, and now you may have several weeks or months of no income, that could be very, very costly, and so forth. So HELOCs are a really good way to hedge your bets, and so on. Another thing is to create like a Section 8 rainy day fund, which I kind of alluded to earlier on, where every time they get paid the rent, they assign 10%, let's say, of that total amount into a rainy day fund. So they call it like a forced savings, a separate account where every time they collect rent, a certain portion of the total rent gets put into this rainy day fund. And as time goes by, that rainy day fund gets built up, and eventually it's quite healthy. So in the event an emergency arises, they have some money set aside for situations like that. So that's sort of a Section 8 rainy day fund, and they use like 10%. If you can do that, that's fine. If you can only do 5%, fine. If you can do 15 or 20%, it's even better. But the idea is to have some funds available to cover you when things get tight. Okay, so these strategies I've just talked about, just not about saving money. They're really about preserving your sanity and your solvency during these difficult times. So what are some of the action items that you can do as it pertains to building a financial buffer? Well, you can open a dedicated reserve account for each rental property. Something you could do. You can set aside a certain percentage, say 10% of all Section 8 payments towards a contingency fund. So you don't have to put it all in, but you set aside a certain percentage and start building slowly. And also the thing you can do is to arrange for a backup of credit in advance now. I talked about home equity lines of credit, if your property has some equity, and so on. So we are now number 3. So let's talk about what I've done so far. So far I've covered 3 items. Understanding the Section 8 landscape. Things are changing. I talked about leases and the importance of the lease and certain things that you can do now as it pertains to strengthening your lease. And then number 3 is I've talked about is building a financial buffer that's in place to have a rainy day fund and have some credit available just in case there's a slowdown in payments. So these are things that you can do now, and rather than waiting until the payments stop and then it's too late and you start making some hasty decisions. So we're kind of midpoint of the live stream. If you got some questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll get to them in about 10 minutes or so. Anything to do with real estate, whether you're buying a deal, lending, tenant, landlord, analysis and analyzing the deal, whatever it is, put them in the chat box and I'll try and get to you shortly, about 10 minutes or so. And if you want more of a deeper dive where we can go into one-on-one time with me for an hour, then you can go to my website, www.joeasimo.com, www.joeasimo.com, and press the button that says Ask Dr. Joe, Ask Dr. Joe. And we can do a deep dive into your situations. Just did a great one, a few days ago. In fact, I got one tomorrow, where we're talking about deep dive into a scenario that they're facing about tenants and how to deal with difficult tenants and strategy you can do to turn around a adversarial relationship and hopefully become a positive relationship whereby it creates a win-win. I mean, that's all possible. That's going to be a deep dive because obviously we're going to go to a lot of detail. But, whatever your situation, you book a one-on-one with me. I'll be more than happy to share my 35 years worth of experience. There are a whole lot of scenarios I haven't seen that hopefully I can help you avoid making what I call unnecessary mistakes. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to number 4, which is communications. I talked about communication a few seconds ago, building rapport with your tenants. And communication is absolutely important because it builds trust. And hopefully it can help you retain your tenants. I know some of you guys have a situation whereby I don't want to see my tenants. I don't want to know my tenants. I don't care about the tenants. All I want is their money. That's it. Just keep it simple. As long as you pay your rent, we're all happy. I don't want to see you, know you. I don't care about you. Just make sure you pay your rent. I mean, that may be okay for you, or maybe okay in good times, but in bad times, it's not okay because communication is the key, and so on. So the question is, would your tenants work with you or against you in a time of crisis? Okay, we're going to go through turbulent times. Are they going to work with you, or is it every man for themselves, every woman for themselves? And I think that if they work with you, you tend to get a lot further. If it's every man for themselves, it's not very productive. Okay, so great landlords know that how to communicate, and or know that communication is just as important. It's not just how you communicate, but what you communicate. And a lot of lands are very condescending to some of these tenants. You're just a voucher holder. You don't have any money. You're just living off society, and it's very condescending, very arrogant. And that doesn't build trust. And so how you communicate is very, very important. During these times of policy changes, payment delays, or inspection backlogs, the tenants is going to be worried just as much as you are. I mean, are they going to be able to stay in your home? Are they going to have their funds cut? Are they going to have to be making more payments? How's it going to impact them? They're anxious just as much as you are. So savvy landlords keep tenants informed. Okay. When you get information, if it's relevant, share it. Set realistic expectations and try to work together to resolve challenges. It's a partnership almost. And I see it that way. A lot of you don't see it that way. It's an adversarial relationship. So, one experienced, landlord in DC, sends quarterly newsletters. I check in with my tenants. I do inspections every 6 months. I have an assistant that checks in every 3 months just to make sure everything's okay. And, this person did a quarterly newsletter. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just saying that communication is important. And, making sure that they're okay, make sure that they're happy, making sure that, they're not going to leave you and you're going to have a turnover and so on. So, you may want to conduct in-home inspections, maybe once every 6 months or so, and make sure your tenants are happy, checking in with them. This is simple. It's practical. It's something that you can do if you have the attitude and the mindset to do that. And but it can sort of generate goodwill, and you can address problems proactively, so you'll have fewer complaints. and you have more cooperative responses, more cooperative tenants, and hopefully there's less disruption for you. In contrast, we've heard from other landlords who avoided contact altogether. They don't want to see their tenants. They don't want to hear from them. And, that lack of communication may be okay until something goes wrong. And then you're going to have dealing with angry tenants, upset tenants, uncooperative tenants. And that's going to raise your stress level immensely. There's a lot to be said for what I call peace of mind, having tenants who just doing the right thing. And but when you're stressed out, you got tenants from hell all over the place. They're playing you. They're taking advantage of the situation. It's horrible. And they're laughing at you. They know more about the law than you do. They're taking you to landlord tenant court, and they're calling the housing authority on you. That's too stressful. Anyway, so what are some of the action items associated with communications? I would suggest you want to schedule quarterly or biannual home inspections. And, I do that. If you're in the DC area, maybe you can, I may be able to help you there. Establish clear, calm communications protocols during payment delays. So you want to let the tenants know, hey, I haven't received the rents from the housing authority. Maybe you can check in as well, and so on. Use text messages and email platforms, to provide updates to your tenants during difficult times. So again, communications. The idea is not to be playing in the dark. That's number 4. So let's go on to number 5. I've got 5 and 6 left. So number 5 is talking about navigating inspections and bureaucracy. Navigating inspections and bureaucracy. And I suppose the question is, are you losing rent because of failed inspections and red tape? Are you losing inspections, or are you losing rent or money because of failed inspections and red tape? What I mean by that is that as part of the program, every year or 2 years, depending on where you are, the housing authority has to do an inspection of your property. And if you fail the inspection, they usually give you one chance to take care of it. However, if you don't take care of it, you can have your payment stopped. So you want to make sure that you don't fail your inspections. And a lot of the issues, it's what we call abatement. They put your money in abatement. You're not getting it back. It's gone until the issue is addressed. And when they're having cuts, they may cut staff. So it may take longer for you to have your inspection again, which means that if you're cut off, you may stay off for a longer time. So there could be delays to your payments. And that essentially will give you greater cash flow reduce cash flow, I suppose. It's a cash flow killer. How about that? But a lot of this thing is preventable. Landlords who succeed in this space, like me, I treat inspections like a sales presentation. I treat it seriously. I get my tenants, ask my tenants to prepare the unit. I incentivize them to pass the inspections. I train the tenants, a lot of these tenants on what the inspector is looking for, and therefore they can be proactive. We can understand if there needs to be any repairs. We can do those repairs before the inspections, and if necessary, follow up with the inspector just to understand if you did fail, what you failed for. So that way, when you fix it, you're going to pass, and it's not going to interrupt your payment flow. So, another investor shared how she developed a pre-inspection checklist. Okay, so they have an idea. They know what the inspector is looking for. They're going to check the windows. They're going to check the doors. They're going to flush the toilets. They're going to turn the burners on for the stove. They're going to check the refrigerator. There's a whole bunch of health and safety things that they're going to do as part of this Section 8 inspection process. So she's developed a pre-inspection checklist, and they go through that before the inspection. Or if she doesn't do it, she gets the tenant to do it, or gets the part of a maintenance crew to do it as well. Again, proactive. Another investor, pays the contractor to do walkthroughs every quarter, just to make sure everything's okay and to prevent any issues before they escalate. So, you don't want to wait. You take these things very seriously and you be proactive, because failed inspections means no money. No money means no money. So take inspections seriously, and there's things that you can do. So what's some of the action items associated with navigating inspections and bureaucracy? Create a standardized Section 8 checklist, build relationships with local inspectors and understand their expectations, what are they looking for, and also document all communications efforts to show compliance. And then finally, number 6 is to diversify within and beyond the voucher program if you have to. I'm all in on Section 8 program, but some people may not feel comfortable with that. They may want to diversify, have some Section 8 tenants, maybe have some market rate tenants. So the question is, what's your plan if Section 8 suddenly dries up? I don't think it's going to dry up. I don't think they're going to can the program. I think they may reduce the funds, but that's because there's too many families out there that depend on housing. I don't think they're going to throw out on the streets, women and children. Well, I hope not anyway, but you never know. So the question is, what's your plan if Section 8 suddenly dries up? So even the most Section 8 dependent landlords are now exploring diversification. I'm not saying abandon the program. You may want to balance it, with other things like midterm rentals or, short-term rentals or corporate housing. I mean, there's lots of different niches where you can explore, so that way you minimize your exposure to the Section 8 situations. Other people may have rentals in other jurisdictions, so they spread it across multiple jurisdictions. So they're not sort of limited to just one housing authority, because the implementation it'll vary from housing authority to housing authority. So they'll buy properties in different housing authorities to kind of spread their risk around. And this helps in many ways. And but the other thing is to develop relationships with your housing authority, and hopefully those relationships will help you during turbulent times. So what are the final action items? Evaluate other types of tenancy: market rate, insurance, student, or traveling nurses. They're all income streams potentials. Diversify across multiple housing authorities, and also test Section 8 alternatives in strong rental markets. So in conclusion, the bottom line is we need to secure our future financially before the shakeup hits. The warning signs are clear. Section 8 is entering a period of transition. For those willing to listen, prepare, and adapt, I think it presents not just risk, but also potential opportunities. The most successful investors, they don't wait until the storm hits to take action. They put up the shutters early. They're proactive. They review their game plan, they establish game plans, and they position themselves to not just survive, but also to expand. Time and time again, the difference I think I found anyway between a struggling and a thriving landlord, really just comes down to preparation. Those who have built buffers, stayed informed, adjusted their leases, maintained strong relationships with their tenants, they're able to weather the policy changes and the payment delays that may happen. Well, those who don't do any of this stuff, just bury their head in the sand, pretend it's all, going to go away. Many were forced to sell their properties, take on avoidable debt because they went into a cash flow issue, or they just exited, they sold it, altogether. They went out. So as we face an evolving housing policy environment, one thing is certain: the Section 8 of yesterday may not be the Section 8 of tomorrow. But the change doesn't have to be your enemy. With the right strategies in place, change can be your advantage, to your advantage. The question is, are you ready? It's not a drill. The warning signs are out there. The market is shifting. Now is the time to get your act together, learn from other people, hopefully, make the changes necessary so that you can thrive and not just survive during this turbulent time. So take the steps now, protect your properties, protect yourself, protect your income streams. And that, my friends, is the end of today's live stream education part. We're going to go to Q&A in a second. If you got some questions, please put it in the chat box and I will get to them shortly. Anything to do with real estate, put them in there. If you want to send me an email, you can email me at joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me where you can do a deep dive into any topic pertaining to real estate, you go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com. That's www.joeasamoah.com. And you can press the button that says Ask Dr. Joe, and you can schedule a one-on-one with me. Those sessions are really good. Really, I really enjoy those. Diving deep into situations that we really can't do during the during the segment here. But with that said and done, let's get down to the Q&A, and let's see what I've got here. We have Dow2, and Dow2 is saying, greetings from Phoenix, Dr. Joe. Hope you're doing well, Dow2. And let's have a look. Nestor Can. I'm not on the Section 8 program as of yet. I plan to have a Section 8 tenant by August. Okay. Is there anything I should know about moving forward? Yeah. I mean, if I don't know where you're based, Nestor, but I think it'll be a good time to try to develop some relationships with your local housing authority. If they have any like orientation meetings, or if they have any landlord education sessions, you may want to attend one of those and learn more about how it's administered locally. And also you can start developing some relationship with some of the people. I think that's worthwhile. Get to know who the players are. I think it's important to have a good lease. I think it's good to check your mindset, and what's your customer service, approach is. I think it's a good idea to how you're going to handle repairs. Things are going to go wrong with the property. What systems are you going to have in place to take care of that if something happens? So there's certain things that you can do in lieu of your tenant coming in August. And it's a great program. There's going to be some turbulent times, but it's a very, very, I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but that's just me, and so on. So do you think this administration will hurt landlords or voucher holders more? I don't know. It really doesn't matter what I think, tell the truth. The bottom line is that it doesn't matter. There's going to be some changes. I don't know what the changes are going to be. Nobody knows. And all I do know is that now is the time to prepare. And some of the action items I talked about during the live stream is some of the things that you can do now and not have to wait until, we hit the iceberg, and then we're trying to figure out what we're going to do now. There are dark clouds approaching, and now is the time to prepare and so on. So, we're going to be impacted, but I don't know who's going to be impacted more, whether it's the tenants or landlords. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm going to be impacted, so I need to do what I got to do. Do you think the budget cuts will be the same in every state? Will rent increases be affected? I don't know. That's a good question. But I do know that rent increases will be affected, because if their budgets are cut, there's a pretty good chance that they're not going to allow any rent increases, because all it does, it increases the deficit. So I think, for those people who will think about having a rent increase, you may want to apply it now, because once the budget gets cut, I think you may not have any rent increases for a little while. Again, I don't know, but it makes sense. That's what they've done a couple of times where we are. When their budget ran into a problem, they stopped rent increases. They stopped allowing more people into the program. They made it tighter to stay in the program. They had staffing cuts. It was several things, which I've already discussed. So I don't know if it's going to apply in different states. But we'll see. Okay. Will this cut reduce payment standards to Section 8 landlords? There's a pretty good chance that they may not reduce the payment standard. They may not reduce rents. I've never had a situation where they reduce rents because these are contracts that you have with the housing authority. But, they may reduce payment standards and say we will not pay above this amount. That could happen. And especially for new contracts where an existing contract is not in place. So they may reduce the payment standard. So for example, if rents were $3,000 now, they probably will abide by that contract. But for new contracts, so if there's a turnover and the tenant leaves and you have to put a new tenant in, they may say, well, we're not going to pay $3,000 anymore. We're going to pay $2,800 or $2,500. Okay, for new contracts. That may happen. They may reduce the payment standards. But again, I don't know. So that's why I'm saying now is the time to request a rent increase. Now is the time to start developing a relationship with your tenants so they don't leave. So you don't have this issue whereby you're going to have a vacancy. And then you don't know what's going to happen when you find a new tenant. So yeah, they may change the payment standards. Greetings from John Mark Stevens. Hi, Mark. John, sorry. Greetings from Mobile, Alabama. Dr. Joe, please share your lease. Thank you. You can go to my website and you can purchase the lease. I forgot what it is. There's a bundle. I have a bundle there where you can get the lease. You can get the, I think, inspections. There's a few documents which I use. Tenant rules and responsibilities and things like that. I think 5 or 6. So you can get that, or you can shoot me an email, and we'll see. We can do it that way. So email is joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com, and but you don't want one of those Mickey Mouse leases where it's a couple of pages, and it's so generic, it's worthless. You want something with some teeth in it, and that's where my lease comes in. Okay. I like to book a session. Okay, digital nomad, no problem. I would say go to my website, joeasamoah.com, joeasamoah.com, and there should be a link there for Ask Dr. Joe, and you can press the button there and book a session. And let's do a deep dive, digital nomad, and on whatever topic you want to cover. As you can see, I've been doing this for a little while, and so on. Ty, do you do annual leases or short-term lease terms for your Section 8 tenants? The way the Section 8 program works is that it's a 1-year contract. You have a 1-year, what they call a HAP contract, and that's for 12 months. And after that, it goes to month to month. So that's how they do it here in the Washington, D.C. area. It's 1 year, then it's month to month thereafter. So that's how I do it. And my lease reflects that. And, if the tenant wants to leave after 12 months, then they can. If they want to leave before 12 months, normally they can't. Normally Section 8 won't allow it, unless it's really, emergency type situation, or there's a failure somewhere on the part of you, the landlord, or something happened to the tenant or whatever. But usually it's 12 months, and then it's month to month thereafter. So that's how I wrote that's how my lease is structured. And, but I'm focused on customer satisfaction, making sure my tenants are happy. So they're looking to stay a long time. My longest tenant is 28 years now, and I have 15-year tenants, 8-year tenants, 12-year. I spoke to one of them yesterday. She was 16 years with me, and so on. Yeah, it's great when you get the right tenants who are happy, and there's no drama going on. It's a good business. Okay. Hey, Charles. Hi, Charles. Hey, Dr. Joe. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Are you aware of how Section 8 program may change in DC from the proposed federal budget cuts and how DCHA may react to these changes? Yeah, the short answer, I don't know. And all I do know is that changes will be coming. And typically in the past, I mean, some of these things are pretty obvious. If budgets are cut, which they will be cut, okay, I don't think we can fool ourselves in thinking that the budgets are going to increase. It's going to get cut, which means that they're going to have less money. If they have less money, they're going to have to, do something to bridge the gap, which means that they're going to either cut their staff, so staff level may go down. If staff levels go down, it means that fewer people have to do the same amount of work, which means that there's more delays getting things answered, questions answered, more hoops you're going to have to go through. If you don't know anybody, good luck with that, and so on. So that's probably what's going to happen. I don't think they're going to allow rent increases because there's less money. And so if you want a rent increase, you may want to do it now if you can. I don't think they're going. I think they're going to try to cut people off the program, which means that if you're not complying with the program, it's easier for them to cut you off, whether you're a landlord or a tenant. There's a bunch of different things which could happen. I don't know which one or if any of them will happen, but all I do know that is that now is the time for us, savvy people like you and I, to prepare. And that's the purpose of today, is to be proactive so that if things happen, we're not sort of scurrying around trying to figure out what to do. And that's the reason why I try to do today's session, is to give you some action items that hopefully you can do now before the storm arises. Good question, Charles, and so on. Hope you're doing well. Hi, Dr. Joe. If an inspection is scheduled by a housing authority, is it better to wait until it passes before requesting a rent increase? If this is John, I think this is Johnny in DC. The way DCHA operates is that you cannot request a rent increase if you failed an inspection. They won't approve it. Let's just put it that way. So you want to make sure that you submit your rent increase after they've passed the inspection, either the first time round or on the re-inspection. So if you have an inspection, let's say June the 1st, let's just say, and it passes, then you can submit your rent increase then. If it fails on June the 1st, then what you want to do is to fix the problems as soon as possible. And in DC, you can request a re-inspection earlier. You don't have to wait 30 days. You can request it when the work is done. And so you can request you can request a re-inspection as soon as possible. And then assuming that it passes, then you submit your rent increase. Okay. But if you haven't passed an inspection during, I think, a 12 or 24 month period, then your rent increase may not be approved. So there's some things that you can do there. I think that's how it works in DCHA. I'm not too sure about the other jurisdictions, but typically they won't give you a rent increase unless your house has passed inspection within the last 12 months or 24 months. A good question though. Digital nomad. PHA determines a rent between 90 and 110% of the area's payment standards according to HUD. Okay. I want to charge 110% or even 100% fair market rent, but the PHA wants to charge me 90%. What do I do to get the higher rent? Okay, so my understanding of your question, digital nomad. Again, if you got some questions, please put in the chat box. Oh gosh, it's almost 8 o'clock. I'm gonna have to wrap this up. That's a deep dive question. There's some strategy you can do there. Digital nomad, you want to book a session with me. If they want to, you're going to have to justify why they should give you more money. Okay. And there's ways that you can document why your rent is reasonable. There's 3 things, I'll just keep it high level, that they consider before approving your rent. 1, is it affordable? Sorry, last thought. Is it reasonable? What that means is that is it within? Is it reasonable? Is it is it competitive? Number two, is it within the payment standards? So there's only so much they'll pay for a particular house, in the area if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's what they call payment standards. And then the third thing, which is important, is what they call affordable. Is this affordable for the tenant? Is it within 30 to 40% of their income level? So these are three things that they factor in to determine whether to approve your rent, and also how much the tenant pays if they can stay there. So there's strategies you can pursue that can get you potentially more rent. And that's more of a deep dive, which I can share with you off the record as to what I've done. And, so if you want to book a session, Digital Nomad, we can kind of deep dive there, because it's almost 8 o'clock and I need to wrap this up. What are your thoughts on tax deed investing? Do you use that strategy to acquire properties? I don't do tax lien investing. I haven't bought one successfully. I've attended some of these things, but I've never been the most successful buyer. And also, I think they have a redemption period, depending on the state that you're in. It could be 6 months or a year, where the previous owner could buy the house back. Well, in fact, you don't buy the house at the auction. You get a certificate that allows you to foreclose on the owner after the redemption period is expired. That's my understanding how it works. But I've never pursued that strategy. I know some people who are doing it, and they do quite well. And finally, it's now 8 o'clock. Good evening, Marlon. Hey, Marlon. Long time no hear. Hope you're doing well. And Marlon is a real estate investor in the DC area. I think he lives in Baltimore now, but he's got a few properties here in Washington, DC. Hope you're doing well, Marlon. Long time no hear. I'm doing fine myself. So, my friends, it is 8 o'clock. I'm going to wrap it up. Hope today was helpful. Again, if you want to shoot me an email, you can email me at joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. And if you want to do a one-on-one with me, go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com, and you can book a one-on-one with me where we can do a deep dive into your situation, whatever that may be, and you can leverage, hopefully, off my 35 years worth of experience. So that, my friends, I wish you the best for this evening, and I will see you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, for another live Wealth Wednesday. Take care. Bye for now.